Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships. Today's video is a byproduct of a couple of emails I've gotten from different people over a few months that have kind of gotten at the same thing. So let me put this to you as a question. You can think about it for yourselves. Have any of you had the experience where the narcissistic person in your life encouraged you, pressured you almost, to engage in behaviors that aren't good for you? You went along, and then they used that against you. So I want you to think about that, right? Come on, come on. It's almost like peer pressure, right? Do this, and you do. And then it comes back to bite you. So let's even start this with, remember when you were a kid, right? All of us were kids. Peer pressure was a thing then, right? And peer pressure was such that you may have felt compelled to go down garden paths that just weren't good for you. It's a part of being a kid. Experimenting with drugs or alcohol, tobacco use, skipping school, clipping stuff from a store, right? Peer pressure is, and we know this, is profoundly powerful. It's that desire of the post-pubertal or adolescent kid wanting to fit in, wanting to be a part of something. Now, most people grow out of it. It's often bullies that are leading the peer pressure, that whole getting people to do things to prove their loyalty or even to get collateral on them. If you do something bad and they know it, that can even hang over your head past adolescence. But the fact is, though, this isn't limited to youth. This pattern really does happen in narcissistic relationships. Because as we've said, narcissistic relationships feel like a grooming process, a sort of slow march towards them controlling you. Now, there are a few reasons a narcissistic person may want you to do something that you don't want to do. Those things might include substance use, alcohol use, sex, spending money, or investing money. So especially early on, they may encourage and even psychologically coerce you to do the behavior you don't want to do. Oh, come on, you're such a stick in the mud. You're no fun. God, why are you so against just taking a little bit of a risk? Or you're such a prude. If it's early in the relationship, you may give in to keep the relationship going. You may give in because you actually don't identify as a stick in the mud or as a prude or as risk averse. So you give in because you don't want that to be your identity in the relationship. You go along. Well, when you do this, one thing that happens is that they're kind of taking away your ability to have something over on them. If you don't do what they're doing, for example, they're drinking heavily or whatever it is they're pressuring you to do, and then you call them out on that behavior at a later date, well, they pressured you to do it once too. You'll be hit with the, well, you're one to talk. They may even show you, for example, pictures of you drinking, maybe even drinking too much. Narcissistic folks are really tactical. And by bringing you down with their behavior, they're able to push back on their own shame. Well, you did it too, so it can't be that bad. Another is part of them testing the limits early in a relationship. If they're able to successfully pressure you, then they're establishing that they can push a boundary. And if you yield, then they're just going to keep pushing more. But what they may end up doing then is taking those images and having those images that they keep as basically extortionate images that they can use to drive the course, for example, of a divorce proceeding. Now, some of you may be thinking, come on now, Dr. Ramani, you're giving people who are in narcissistic relationships a free pass here. They're adults. They can say no. They can take personal responsibility. Yes, they can. That is true. However, the coercive, manipulative nature of the narcissistic relationship, the tendency for people to go along with a partner and certainly initially not view their partner's motives as malevolent, is what has gotten many a person into severe problems with narcissistic people, even losing life savings, reputations, and custody battles. And even if whatever they get on you is not used as collateral, you can expect that they will use it as a tool to manipulate and shame you. Oh, you aren't so perfect, or you did that bad thing, or you're no different than me. You think you're so great? Well, I got pictures here that show otherwise. And that piles on top of the existing shame that's already multiplying from being in a relationship like this. If someone were to waddle up to us in the street and try to give us a drink or some drugs or try to take our money, I'd like to think most of us wouldn't do it. We might even try to get the person arrested. The context within an intimate relationship is quite different. We may view ourselves as open and flexible, so when we are painted, for example, as rigid for not participating in the narcissistic person's request, we may give in, especially if it's something like, yeah, have a drink. We may believe in a person who's in our life because we think they love us. So what's a drink or a drag on a joint is part of an evening out. Now, while this level of collateral-driven coercion and manipulation designed to paint someone in a bad light and cause them harm, it's definitely something we see more in malignant narcissism and psychopathy, but it's real, and it happens in a lot of toxic relationships. Listen, if this has already happened to you, you can't go back, right? So one thing I think it's important for you to know is that many survivors blame themselves. Like, you think, I'm the one who's supposed to be responsible for myself. I'm the one that went along. Okay, sure. Survivors are often shamed in these situations. Too often what we hear is that you're an adult, you had to know what you were doing. Now, what that accusation misses is that you trusted this other person. You loved this other person. You couldn't imagine that someone who claimed to love you would do this. But you need to understand the psychological manipulation you are in one of these relationships, the grooming and the faulty beliefs you held about their love. You're approaching this relationship from a place of trust, of believing that someone who said they loved you, and certainly wouldn't do something like this, coax you to do something, and then use it to manipulate and shame you. But they do. You can't go backwards. You can't undo what you've done. If you are in a new relationship and are being pushed to be or do something that you're not, that's not love. And I hope you can resist it. But you can let go of some of the shame and self-blame which piles on top of what was already happening to you in the relationship. There's no fix here other than self-compassion. But it's also reflecting on how much we let the narcissistic folks set our identity in the relationship. Well, they're saying I'm a stick in the mud. They're saying I'm rigid. They're saying I'm a prude. They're saying I'm no fun, or I can't take financial risks. I don't believe that's true, so I'll show them by doing what they're asking me to do. The ultimate safeguard against getting into a toxic relationship or a narcissistic relationship is knowing who you are. And if you know that you're not those things they're accusing you of, so you don't have to drink or do something you don't want to prove it to them, then that's the hedge. But we aren't. Most of us don't stand solidly on our 2 feet with our identities. We get shaped by the pressure of others, and that is 1,000 times worse in a world fueled by social media. Know you first. That can be a tremendous protection. And anytime you're asked to do something that's uncomfortable and it's being framed as, oh, I guess you aren't that much fun. If you know you're fun, and you can say, I'm good, no thanks. But setting those boundaries to learn to do that and resist all of this and get stuck in these really bad situations can take a long number of years or a lifetime to get there. Thanks again.